about coaching is a lot of coaches think that it's about science. It's about X's and O's. It's about what plays you run. I think that's a very small part of it. You've got to be good at those things in order to have your team's confidence. The most important thing when it comes to that is keeping it simple. But then it's the art of getting people and players to do things that they aren't comfortable with. That's what coaching is all about at any level. How do you get kids or adults or boys or girls or whatever to do the things that they aren't naturally comfortable with? And the only way you can do that is, to try to create an environment where they understand why it's necessary to step outside their comfort zone. One of the things I tell my team over and over again is that my job is to get you comfortable being uncomfortable. That's how you get good in sports. And that's why you run kids. That's why I run them. We got to get comfortable running hard and pushing ourselves beyond the point where we're tired, because if you can't get to that point, then we're not going to improve. We're not going to be able to wear other teams down because of that. So it's a good question. Are there other questions? Yes, sir.
Very young kids, maybe 6 to 8 years of age, and when there's a player that everybody goes to that player, I know they're very young, there's maturity. Do you A, change the play to have other people get involved, or B, have the position of the player that everybody goes to change so the other kids get involved? How would you deal with everybody's passing to that one guy at that young age?
The dominant personality. The question is, with young kids especially, how do you deal with a dominant player? Do you change the play so where other kids get the ball, even though they all naturally want to give it to the one dominant guy? Or do you change the position of that player to help him? And there's no easy answer to this. And it's true at every level. I had a player this year on my team who was the dominant personality on my team. I wanted a running team. This was the worst runner on my team. So trying to figure out a way to get my best player to fit in with what I thought was going to be long-term the best fit for our team was a real challenge. And I would say to you, the thing that you have to do most with your good player is to give him room when he has the ball to make plays, and then to teach your guys around him how to play off of what he's going to do. Because when there is a real clear hierarchy within a group, whether it's with young kids or old kids, there's not going to be a lot you can do as a coach to influence that. And the example I'll use you is one that everybody around here is familiar with, and that's Kobe Bryant. What happens with Kobe Bryant sometimes? He just takes over the game, and you see all the other guys just standing and watching him. And there's not a whole lot at times that anybody, even Phil Jackson, the greatest basketball coach of all time, can do to make much of an impact there when it gets that way. But think about it. If you were coaching, what would you be emphasizing to the other guys? You'd be emphasizing being in position when Kobe draws all that attention, be in position for the ball to come easily to you, to react off of where he goes. So you can teach your team that. An example would be, let me have one guy demonstrating out here. This is one of the drills that I like doing. Can I get one guy to jump up here? And where's that ball? This is something that I think is really important for big guys. So why don't you get down there on the block? And working on things like this and just 2-on-2 or 1-on-1, and then also with your whole team is important. But when I'm working with big guys, and one of my specialties is one of the reasons why I've been able to advance in this profession is to work with big kids. So if he's right there and I'm the best player and I got the ball and I start coming down the lane right here, he's got to make a decision of where to go now and not just be an additional defender. All right, so I would work with him or anybody else on my team about the natural reactions. When I come middle, I want you to circle underneath the baseline, okay? So when you're in that position right there, and I make a good strong move into here, you're going there so you can get to that position early to receive the ball. Now the opposite of that would be as if I went baseline, okay? So if I come here, now where are you gonna go? Right there. So working with your players on reacting to that dominant guy from different parts of your play. I think that's really important. I call those bailout spots. How do you get all 4 guys into bailout spots when your best player is making his move? And that's we spent a ton of time working on that with my team. What a lot of people see is when there's a guy in the post and he makes a move and the defense converges, where on the floor do you want your other guys to make those plays? And then also, what do you want those guys to do? If I have a big guy, what I wanted was for him to come under the baseline, but be near the goal on the catch. when I came middle. When I went baseline, I want him to come to the middle of the court, but be in a position where he can catch a short, tight pass and get the ball up onto the rim. So trying to figure out things like that, I think is really important. The other thing that I wanted to mention that you made me think of with this is just the opposite of that. His question was, what do you do with your best player and how to play off of him? And it's a combination, obviously, of figuring out the plays that put him in a situation to help make your team better, and then also changing your plays so the other guys have a chance. What do you do with your worst player? This is always the dilemma in camp. What do you do with your worst guy? If you're coaching a team of small guys, what do you do with the worst guy? Anybody got any good ideas? Put him on the bench. Well, I'm assuming that you're going to give the kid a chance, and I don't know what the rules are in the leagues that you coach, but I talked about this in camp all the time. How do you get a kid who's trying to fall in love with the game and be on your team? How do you put him in a position where he has fun and can have some kind of contribution and impact? Most obvious way, let him take it out of bounds after the makes. Let him take it out of bounds, especially if you have a rule where there's no press or whatever. So, you want those kids to have some kind of role that they can feel pretty good about and that they can do it every time. You'd be surprised. The kid who's not a very good player, if you tell him to take it out of bounds every time, boy, he'll do that. And he'll go home and tell his mom and dad that he had a great experience doing that, and all his job is to do is get the ball in bounds and race the other end of the floor. He'll do that really hard. What else can you do? You can give that kid a job on all free throw situations to be the guy who blocks out the shooter. Coming up with roles to keep your worst player involved with little ideas like that, I think that's as much to do with the art of coaching as anything, because the other kids on your team will see that you're making that effort to involve the players who aren't as good. What that'll do is it'll increase your buy-in from everybody. It'll increase the experience, it'll increase the positivity of the experience of the young man who's not very good. It'll also get the other players on your team to be more bought into what the coach is doing. It'll get the other players on your team to see more the value of teamwork, of involving everyone. So little things like that are really, really important. In all the camps that I've worked with, I've made a special time to emphasize those things. Well, you got another question?
The defense situation you said earlier, it depends on where your strength of your defenders are at. If you go force baseline or middle. Mm-hmm. One philosophy I always choose is forcing people to the sideline, using the sidelines as a defender. So we force them not towards the goal, but towards the sideline,
right,
where if they either go out of bounds or they're stuck. What do you think about that?
Okay, the question was, it had to do with defensively where you force guys. Do you force to the baseline or to the middle? He said he likes to force sideline because using the sidelines as an additional defender is what he thinks works best. And that's what I did with my team this year, mostly, is try to, when the ball got to the side of the floor, especially at the free throw line or below, we did everything we could to tilt the defense that way and to keep the ball on that side of the floor. And there are a number of reasons why I did that. So it's a sound philosophy. But I'll tell you this, the nice thing for me now, I'm 40 years old. I've worked with a Hall of Fame coach in Don Nelson. He's got the most wins in NBA history. I work with Mike Montgomery, who's a Hall of Fame college coach. I work with Dave Odom, who's the winningest coach at Wake Forest. I work with a guy named Tony Shaver, who's one of the top coaches in the history of Virginia. And the reason I bring all that up is because all of them do it differently. There are a million ways to skin a cat in this game. And one of the nice things for me is to see with the different coaches I've worked with, some of the things that one coach insists upon every time, another great coach may do it exactly opposite of that. So there's not one way that is clearly, in my mind, better than all the rest on a lot of different things, And what you got to do is choose what you want, be committed to it, and insist that your team do it. And also understand there are going to be times, and make your team understand this too, that they can do everything you're asking them to do, and it still might not work. And getting your team comfortable with that idea is a tough thing. I'll use an example of Don Nelson, who's known as an innovator in this game. He's one of the top innovators ever. Well, we were a small ball team in the NBA. We didn't have any big guys. But what we did is we led the league in shot blocks, and we led the league in forced turnovers. And you probably ask, how do we do that? Well, we'd spend time in practice where, and I'd never seen this, I thought it was crazy. He would work with guys from the wing on pressuring the ball, and then as a guy beat you, he would work on trying to block shots from behind. Now think about that. That goes against every fundamental you've ever heard of, right? But that was the thing that gave our team the best chance. You know, when we got beat, we drew a guy over for help. We didn't commit all the way. We went back. We tried to force pull-up jump shots, and we went after them from behind. And next time you're on the park, think about that when you go to shoot. If there's somebody waving at you from behind, it's amazing the impact that has on you. I'll use another example that everybody might be able to relate to, and that's playing against Yao Ming. We didn't have anybody play Yao Ming. You know, Yao Ming's 7'6", but Yao Ming hated playing against our teams with the Warriors because Nelly told our guys, he said, I'll give you $100 for every guard who blocks Yao Ming's shot. So here's how we played Yao Ming. Every time Yao Ming caught the ball, we tried to front him, but they didn't like to throw him lobs because he couldn't jump. So we'd force him out as far as we could, and then we'd make him go middle. And when he came middle, those guards wanted the worst thing in the world. They wanted $100. So if he could make him come to the middle and go to shoot a jump hook or a jump shot, all of our guys from the top of the floor would be back there just swinging like crazy at Yao Ming. Every game we got one of them, but more than the one that we got, it was in his mind that we were coming. You know, so I bring that up just to illustrate that there's a lot of different ways to do a lot of different things in this game. And it's great to be creative. It's great to try different things. But you have to be comfortable, if you're going to do that as a coach, that there'll be times when things don't work. And you know, you got to have a team that can live with that. It's easy when you're one of the winningest coaches of all time in the NBA to try a lot of things, you know, because your players aren't naturally going to question you. It's harder when you're young or inexperienced or just beginning what you're doing to have the courage to try different things. You know, and you don't want to get caught up in trying too many crazy things, but there's a lot of different ways to be effective in this game. Yes, sir. That's a great question. He said, how do you deal with parents having influence on their kids? You know, the most effective strategy in my mind is direct communication. And, you know, I confronted a couple of the parents for my team this year, once during a game even, which I wish I had done differently. But I do think that you have to attack that situation early as a coach, and you have to hope for the buy-in from parents, you know, and you're not always going to get that, obviously. But the examples I'll use, there were two parents on my team that were really, really involved with their sons. And one of them, at one point, and this example is something we were just talking about. My philosophy at the end of a half, like if we got the rebound with 28 seconds on the clock, was not to necessarily ever just hold the ball. You know, I always wanted to attack first and see if we could get something easy. Because if you hold it, typically you're going to face the team's set defense. You're going to have very little chance to score. So you flip that around, sometimes the defense has the advantage there. So always with my team, I wanted my guys in that situation to push and try to get an easy basket. And they knew that. I mean, that's something we had practiced. That's something we had talked about. Everybody knew it. Well, my point guard got the ball. He raced it down the floor. He made a great move. He went to score, and kid came over, and it should have been a blocking foul and an and one, and the referee called a charge. Might have been Martin who called it. But the kid's dad stood up and started screaming at the kid, "You should have pulled it out. You should have pulled it out." And I turned to him and said, "Man, sit down. He's playing for me." I told him to go. And I didn't like that I had done that. And the reason I bring that up is because I learned from that. I should have addressed that parent long before, because this wasn't the first time he had done that. What I was hoping was he was going to learn to quiet himself down as he saw that my authority was strong with the team, but he never did.